This is the fellow ODE Brew Grinder. Now, I know you've probably got a lot of questions, and I'll have some answers. And later on in this video, I'll tell you exactly why I love this grinder so much. But if you're tight on time, here are all the features. This grinder boasts a lot of features: sleek industrial design, aluminum. It's built like a tank, a little bit of plastic, pretty small. It can sneak under your countertop, rather small. Grinds knocker. What you put in is going to come out. Single dosing, 80-gram capacity. The retention is very little. Grinds catch bin, nice silicone little paddles. PID controller, exceptionally quiet, shockingly quick. 31 grind settings. Behind this dial is a gigantic burr set, 64 millimeter flat burrs. The biggest flat burrs. It's magnetic. Back in December of 2019, you started to see and hear rumors on Instagram of a conspiracy going on and talks of Bigfoot. And before you knew it, Fellow Products had announced a new product. It's the ODE Brew Grinder. They launched this on Kickstarter with a goal of $200,000 that they needed to raise to bring this grinder to life. Well, within minutes, that $200,000 was raised, and by the end of the campaign, over 1,600 people backed this project for over $1 million. So what makes this grinder so special? Well, you know Fellow Products. They make this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Well, they also make this, and now they make this. Well, you've definitely seen this. Did you know they made this? And they made this. This was actually the first thing they ever made. It's called the Duo Coffee Steeper. And all of that to say, Fellow has made a name for themselves in the coffee industry for making exceptional gear for the home brewer. So like all Fellow products, this grinder is designed for the home brewer in mind. Well, what exactly does that mean? Well, they call it cafe performance for your countertop. And that's because this grinder boasts a lot of features that most cafe quality grinders have. For example, it's got this really sleek kind of industrial design, and it's made out of aluminum. Most parts you're gonna find on this grinder are made out of aluminum with a little bit of plastic. Now, it's built like a tank, but it doesn't quite look like one. It's actually pretty small in stature and in form, and that's what I love about this grinder, is that it can sneak under your countertop or on a coffee bar, and it's not very imposing. It's rather small. It's actually about half the size of my Baratza grinder. Additionally, over here it has a grinds knocker, which is a feature you'd see on cafe quality grinders like the beloved EK43, and that serves to knock the grounds out of the chute to make sure that you get all the coffee that you put in. Now, speaking of putting in coffee, you'll notice that the ODE doesn't have a very large hopper on top, and that's intentional. Fellow doesn't want you storing a whole bag of beans in here because, frankly, that's not just good practice. They're going to go to waste before you can grind them all. So this hopper actually has an 80-gram capacity. What that means is this grinder is designed for single dosing. So each time you brew a cup of coffee, you only need to put in here what you need to brew that cup of coffee. And you can trust me when I say what you put in is going to come out. The retention on this grinder is very little. In my experience, it was much less than a gram of coffee retained each time you grind coffee. So the grind retention is really good. Down below, you'll see the grinds catch bin, which has a nice silicone lid to keep things nice and clean. And on the inside are these creative little paddles that actually help you when you're dosing the coffee out. Additionally, there are some volumetric references in there, but my favorite feature of this grinds bin has got to be this. It's magnetic. Just below this grinds bin, you'll see the only button on this grinder. It's the on and off switch. Now, this grinder has an auto off feature. There's a PID controller in the back that senses when there's no more resistance between the burrs, meaning your coffee has all been ground. Once it senses that, it's going to shut off just mere seconds later. This is a feature that you see in cafe quality grinders, and I am so glad to see this in a home grinder. Check this out. Don't forget to put the grounds catch lid back on. That's it. You see the auto off function? Give the grounds a couple knocks. And there we are. The ODE is also exceptionally quiet and shockingly quick. It grinds about 20 grams of coffee, which is my morning dose, in just over 5 seconds. Comparatively, my Baratza grinder is taking about 3 times as long to grind the same amount of coffee. That's really helpful for me when I'm brewing coffee here in the morning before anyone's awake in my house. The quietness paired with the speed allows me to grind coffee in the morning without waking anybody else up. The true boast of this grinder though, and in my opinion what sets it apart from other home grinders at this price point, is hidden right behind this dial here. You see, this big dial goes from 1 to 11 and has 31 grind settings, but behind this dial is a gigantic burr set. We're talking 64 millimeter flat burrs in this little grinder. They are the biggest flat burrs in a grinder at this price point. And in my opinion, it's what sets this grinder apart from the rest. You see, when you're brewing coffee at home, there are so many variables to manage. Everything from ratio to dose to water temperature to water chemistry, even agitation. But the most important and influential variable on your brew is your grind quality. You see, the quality of your grind and your grind particle distribution directly influences the flavor you get in your cup. Here's how that works. Inside each coffee bean are soluble flavor compounds that can only be released when the coffee is exposed to water. Of course, you know, we grind up coffee to expose more of the bean to the water. The goal is to get the most even grind particle distribution as possible. Now, of course, it's impossible not to get fines, which are the little grind particles, and boulders, which are the bigger grind particles, but we want the biggest quality of the grinds in that sweet spot in your cup. Now, for the most part, with a few exceptions to the rule, flat burrs do a better job of this and more efficient job of this than conical burrs, and that's why I was so thrilled that Fellow decided to go with flat burrs in this grinder. Now, the bigger the burr set, the more capable this grinder is going to be of giving you an even grind particle size. In all my testing and all my brewing, I noticed that this grinder produces a very few amount of fines. That's going to reduce the amount of bitterness in your cup and get you into that sweet spot right where you want to be.
Now, one unique little feature that I haven't really seen on any other grinders is this little grind reference guide. Now, this is cool, but I wouldn't really recommend using it. I would recommend using your taste to dial in your coffee.
My recommendation for dialing in any coffee on any grinder is this. Grind as fine as you can until you perceive bitterness, then back it off a notch or two. That'll be the sweet spot for that specific coffee. Improving the quality of your grind is, in my experience, the most measurable way to improve the taste of your coffee at home. If you're just starting brewing coffee at home, investing in a great grinder is going to help you get the results you're looking for. Now, something I get asked all the time is, Alexander, how can I improve my coffee quality at home? Alexander, I've got some extra cash. Where should I invest it? And my answer is always invest in your grinder. It's the most important variable when it comes to brewing great coffee at home. And when you're picking out a grinder for brewing at home, this is the tension you're trying to manage. How can I get the best grind quality possible without having to take out a loan? And at $300, I'm not sure that there's a grinder on the market that can compete with the features and the functionality of the ODE from Fellow Products. Now, this was recorded in August of 2020, and the Kickstarters are still waiting for the first round of fulfillments of these grinders. Thanks to a global pandemic, things have been slowed down a bit. But if you're in the market currently for an upgrade to your grinder at home, or maybe you're just in the market to buy your first burr grinder, I wouldn't look much further than the ODE. Now, this is a pre-production model because orders haven't quite been fulfilled yet, but I couldn't tell just by looking at it. This grinder is stunning and the build quality is superb. Something I'm really interested in is the longevity of this grinder. This is Fellow's first move towards the grinding industry. Now, their other products speak for themselves, and they've established quite the name for themselves in this industry. So it'll be interesting to see how this grinder fares over time. That being said, it does seem pretty serviceable. Most of the parts are easily accessible, and Fellow is known for their outstanding customer service. So I don't have any worries going forward, but I'm sure these grinders and future versions will only get better over time. Now, it should be noted that this is a filter coffee grinder. It does not have espresso functionality. So for that reason, it's not going to be replacing my grinder? Is it going to find a home on my bar and be used daily for filter coffee? Absolutely, but it doesn't quite have the range to serve every need that I have. And that's important to note. This is not a one size fits all grinder. This is a very good filter coffee grinder. And at the price point, you can't really ask much more. Now, if you're interested in learning more, there is a link to the ODE in the description. And of course, also links to my blog where you can read more of my thoughts on this grinder and on fellow products. But I want to know, what grinder are you using and what are your current struggles with it? Let me know in the comments. I'll meet you there. And until we talk again, keep brewing better coffee.